Welcome back. I've been gone for a while, about 9 weeks, so there's a lot of things that happen. So I thought I would just use this year just to either to recap or to talk about things which I think are happening in terms of current events. Most people are really interested in this, and then, after this, resume the Derech Hashem. Certain ideas which I wanted to mention, I think maybe at different points in time I mentioned it, but I'll just recap. Trump, who I mentioned, actually today's Parshas told us, which is all about Esav. That's what we just started, Parshas told us and so on, Trump has a problem, you see. Although his purpose ultimately, as I've said many times, is to be matar Edom, is to purify Edom, to really turn it around. But what's more important is not just to purify Edom, but really to assist the Jews. Because what the Messiah wants is that Esav, Edom, should become part of what's called, as I mentioned, the Tikkun process. The process of Tikkun, which of course is the process to rectify creation. And Esav originally, of course, failed. He left. He became, of course, heretic, whatever, or heretic, and so on, And ultimately speaking, what the Russian wants, is that Esav should rejoin the movement to rectify creation. I have gone over this in all the previous 21st century shurim. But Trump is in a process, really, in many ways, of becoming that figure. He's not really the figure yet. He has to become. There's a difference of be and becoming. He's got to become. And that's really what he's involved in, so on, But in order to help him along, the Messiah seems to be doing certain things to him in order to wake him up, so to speak. The first thing I would comment is North Korea. Now, this phenomenon of North Korea is astounding. I mean, the guy obviously is a lunatic, because everybody knows the U.S. is incredibly powerful militarily. I mean, it's obvious, I mean, if the United States wanted, then Trump is correct. He knows now, he's president. The U.S. could take out North Korea, finish off the entire country in probably 15 minutes, if that, Certainly in one day, they could destroy the entire North Korea. So how does anybody stand up to America and threaten America's existence? They're not just opposing America, they're threatening the existence of America, which is astounding. It's like a mouse, the old story with the mouse. The mouse, looking at a lion and saying, if you don't cut this out, I'm going to kill you. And meanwhile, of course, the lion can eat up the mouse in approximately 15 seconds. So when you think about it, the whole thing is bizarre. It makes no sense, and the question is, is Kim Jong-un, is he psychotic? What is this guy? Not really, he's just a megalomaniac, that's all. And what he wants to do is not war with America, he's not stupid, but he's, of course, highly irrational. What he simply wants, I think I mentioned, is he wants to be considered a world power. It's megalomania, that's really what it is. He wants everybody to bow down to the guy and say, okay, you are now equal to all of us, Europe and America and all the industrialized nations and so on. Of course, the whole thing is absurd, but that's what a megalomaniac is all about. He's delusional. You see, he thinks that he is probably some incredibly gifted dictator, but he doesn't want a war with America. That's why there'll never be a war. Because he knows he would be wiped out, so what was the whole point? If he's wiped out, so that's the end of his dictatorship. So that makes no sense. Like I said, he's a megalomaniac, and what he wants to do is show everybody that he can flex his muscle and be equal to America. That's what it is. Of course, he came about a year too late. He should have done this with Obama, which he did, because Obama is a complete weakling and tremendously timid. He's a wimp. Obviously, you see that from his whole foreign policy and so on. But the problem with good old Kim is he did it the wrong time. That means when Trump is president. And the last thing you can do with Trump is to confront him, because he will never allow anybody to confront him and to show Trump that he's a wimp. Trump is a very, very strong figure. He will never allow himself to be coward. He has a tremendous amount of defiance. That's characterological with him. But in any case, Kim made a big mistake, you see. So Trump, of course, tweets back to him and says, "You have no idea what we can do to you." And he essentially put Kim in his place. Question is, why now? Now, this is politics. This is the world events and so on. But how do we understand this from a divine perspective? From the Hashgacha. And the answer to that would be that two things. Ribbono Shel Olam is teaching Trump a very important lesson. And he allowed North Korea, Kim, to come up with these ridiculous ideas. What's the lesson? Trump has to learn what an existential threat means. You see, that's critical. And Trump doesn't understand what it means to be existentially threatened. This is the great lesson that Trump has to learn. Why is that? Because Trump said he would take out North Korea. And by the way, he is changing on that, you see. He's learning already. The lesson that God is giving him is working. Trump said in his campaign that he was going to take out North Korea, not take out Iran. Because Iran is an existential threat to Israel. Hey, they threaten Israel every day. It's always death to America, certainly death to the great Satan, and death to the little Satan, which is Israel, And they dream of destroying Israel. That's part of their jihad, that's part of their way that they want to bring the end of the world, to dominate the world, an Iranian Shiite caliphate and so on, And Israel, of course, there's a tremendous concern about that. And of course, Iran is violating the UN Charter, because how can one nation in the UN threaten another nation in the UN? It's against the UN. But of course, the UN does nothing, I mean, look, they're all, like I was saying, they're all Asad Litinas Adin. All of them will suffer enormously because they violate their own charter. So they can never say, well, we never said anything about defending one nation against the other. Well, of course they did. So therefore, what Trump's job really is to stop Iran. Iran is the greatest threat in the planet, much worse than Kim. Why? Because Kim is a megalomaniac. He's into covet, power, and recognition. That's what he wants. Iran is into redemption, geula. It's two different motivations. So Kim, ultimately, who's a megalomaniac, can see the truth. He'll back off. That's what's going to happen eventually, Actually, he may back off, but he'll have to do more than that. But Iran is much more dangerous. Why? Because first of all, Iran is now considered amongst the nations of the world. You see, they now have achieved what's called recognition and legitimacy. And everybody's lining up to do business with them anyway, you see. So that gives them an incredible, tremendous credibility, which is much worse than North Korea, because everybody looks at North Korea. It's an outcast of all the nations. But the second thing about Iran is that they are religiously motivated, and they're willing to give up their lives. That's what a Muslim was willing to do. Just take a look at all the suicide bombers. Therefore, Iran is motivated theologically, which is much worse. And their motive is redemption, which itself is much worse, and so on. They think it's a mitzvah to destroy Israel, you see. And of course, they're all megalomaniacs, it's obvious, But it's megalomaniacs with a theological motive. It's the worst thing of all. You see, this was the Crusades. There are many movements in history that were theologically motivated, which made them much more dangerous than others because they think it's a mitzvah. It's not enough. Not only do they not see themselves as evil, but they actually see them as doing the will of God. You see, or Allah, whatever they call them and so on, So that makes them a much more dangerous enemy. And the truth is, Iran is looking to take over the entire Middle East. It's very obvious. The Shiites, and they have to take over the Middle East. But ultimately speaking, They would love to take over the entire world, which is really what ISIS is trying to do. But they certainly want to be the power in the Middle East over everybody. And of course, that's clearly recognized by Saudi Arabia, all the other nations, Israel and so on, But with Israel, it's an existential threat. With Saudi Arabia and the other nations of the Middle East, it is a dominance threat, that they will dominate the entire region, militarily and economically and so on. Trump doesn't get it. Now he got it, you see. But he only gets it now. Why? Why all of a sudden now does he want to decertify Iran, the whole agreement, which was insane. What Obama did was insane. When you think about it, it's the act not only of an insane person, but an incredibly evil person. Because everybody knows what Iran wants to do. They are the mother of all terrorism. How do you go and allow them to build nuclear weapons and so on? Anyway, Trump had to learn that the hard way. And what the Barsham did is he taught him. He said, listen, you obviously don't understand what an existential threat is. I need to teach you. And he got it. Because Trump is now saying, I want to decertify Iran. And he's handing it over to Congress, but who knows what Congress will do? Because they're also a bunch of wimps. So therefore, that's what the Barsham did. It was a lesson to Trump. You need to learn what it means to be existentially threatened. You see, and therefore, when you think about that, obviously, okay, now you realize what Iran is. And Trump apparently is learning that, so he is going to decertify the agreement, which he's right, it's the worst agreement in history. Imagine, there's a guy, who's across the street and has, he's got his machine guns aimed at your house. I mean, what would you do with this guy? You got to kill him. You got to preempt the guy, right? But instead of doing that, what do? You send over, you buy a shipment of guns and you send over to his address so he can continue the deeds. I mean, are you insane? He's got his guns pointed at you and you're giving him weapons? I mean, what does it take to figure this out? You see, that's why what happened with Obama is beyond it's just incredulous what he did, you see. Of course, it's really treason to the entire world, because all he's doing is allowing the most vicious nation in the world, really, to gain incredible supremacy and destroy the world. I mean, I can't even label the evil of that concept. And of course, there's so many people in in the Congress that realized, voted for this stuff. I mean, it should all be taken out and strung up. Not literally, but figuratively. Anyway, because what they've done basically is destroyed the world. That's really what they've done. Think about that. Yeah, maybe not now, but basically in 10 years when they have legally the right to manufacture nuclear weapons, what does that mean? Who's the guy who will put them in charge? But what makes it even more evil, you see, is the fact that the economic restrictions on Iran was destroying Iran. Iran was finished. They cut them out of the banking system. They stopped all kinds of shipments. They were dying. So all he did was resurrect them. That's what he did, which is unheard of. Just continue for another 2-3 months and they'd be bankrupt, the whole country. You bring them to their knees. I mean, what he did was, it's hard to label. That's how insane it is, you see. But so far what it looks like is that Trump got the message. That's a very important concept. So he's learning. He's learning to adjust and to fit into his role, okay? Which is really in many ways to clean up the mess, certainly in America, and to begin to assist Israel, although he hasn't learned that yet. But there's something else which we begin to notice, because I mentioned that there's a Midrash. The Midrash says, if you remember what I said, there's a Midrash that says, it's in the Yalkut Shimoni, it says in the time basically that the Mashiach ben David will arrive, it says Paras, which is Persia, which is Iran, will start a war with Arabia. And Arabia will consult with Edom, which is America. Okay. And what will happen is that, and then Persia will begin to destroy the world. It's amazing, Midrash. And the Jews and the whole world will be frightened. And the Jews also, Israel will go back and forth in the whole world. Well, what do we do? How do we counter this? You see. And then all of a sudden a bas kol will come out, a divine voice, and say, Higia zman gi'ulaschem. The time of your redemption has arrived. That's what it says. Okay. And then of course the Rebbe assists them, and that's it. From that Midrash we learn that the Iranian threat is the end. Now, 40 years ago, you could never believe that this would ever happen. It's impossible. How could Iran threaten the world? Well, now you see it's possible. Nuclear weapons. But not only that, not only can Iran threaten the world, but the United States under Obama has actually enabled them to have the power to destroy the world. It's incredible. So therefore, Edom, in the form of Obama, has assisted Iran, who's really Muslims, Yishmael, to destroy the world. So what's interesting is that is the end. That shows how close we are to the Messianic era. But what is interesting is that Trump now understands you need to stop existentially threatening nations. It's over with. You got to stop them. Now the U.S., if they wanted to, they can take out Iran, same thing, in one day. Doesn't take much. The U.S. has incredible weapons that which we cannot even begin to imagine. They can have an electronic pulse bomb that can shut down every electronic gadget in the whole Iran. Then they can have a neutron bomb, which just kills people and preserves the buildings, whatever. And it's beyond belief what these guys have. You saw it, And the truth is, you don't have to kill Iranians. Why kill them? Just take out the government. It's not the Iranian people that are the enemies. It's Rahmanis on them. It's the government. So what you do is you just aim some nice, well-placed, missiles, and you just take out the infrastructure, take out the government buildings, and so on. Surprise attack, you wipe out the whole government. It's really very simple when you think about that,
But drones that can take out individuals.
Correct. Yeah.
Zeroing in on one guy.
I know. It's amazing what they can do. Anyway, but. So Iran isn't a threat in a sense really essential to the United States at all, but they can threaten the world. Because it's not only them, because they assign proxies to do their job, like Lebanon, Syria, and so on. So these people, and they're all supplied with Iranian military weapons and so on. So Iran is responsible for the unrest, really, and the violence of the entire world. What is astounding to me, you see, is that the major countries that want to destroy the world is Iran, right? North Korea. Who else is there today? Those are the main thing. Why does the world put up with this? Why do they allow themselves to be hostage to two nations? Does this make any sense? Where is the fortitude, the guts of human beings? Where's the UN or America, whatever? Why don't they just say, hey, what you're doing cannot be done. You are destroying civilization. You're threatening. Therefore, we give you 1 week to desist. After that, we take you out. That's it. If you take out Iran, and you take out North Korea and you wipe them out, that basically will take out enormous amount of terror. Now, it's true. Today, terror is worse because now you have private individuals doing it. That's true. You have what's called these lone wolves, and it's really not lone wolves, but whatever, because they all get their courage and their incentives by all these tapes on the internet, ISIS and so on and so forth. Even that crazy guy who killed how many people? 8 people in Manhattan. He was listening to a whole bunch of ISIS tapes or whatever these tapes are and so on. But what Trump should do, you see, and there's no guts to this. Hopefully he will learn, is you simply look at, how many nations are there that are terrorist nations? There's Iran, there's North Korea. There used to be Syria, but Syria is a basket case. Syria's over. There's Hezbollah and so on. What people should look and say, listen, you want to be a civilization, you want to be a country, no problem. But if you insist on terror and dominating other nations for no reason, not that they're a threat to you, for no reason, we are going to kill you. That's the rule, you see. We will not allow you to destroy civilization. It's really very simple. If somebody comes into your house, right, and pulls a gun, what would you do? You kill him. Or disable him, whatever you do, right? You don't plead with the guy and allow him to kill your family. I mean, it's insane. These nations are destroying the world because they have the capacity, but it's not just destruction. They create enormous amount of pain and suffering to hundreds of millions of people. Why should they be allowed to do that? Nobody would tolerate that in their own home. You see? So if Trump would get it, and he should get it, and I understand why, he should just say, excuse me, I'm not interested in what the UN says, because they're anyway all bribed. The UN is the most corrupt body in the world. You see, you should face all these nations. There are only two of them anyway. Say, listen, I'll give you a week to clean up your stuff. If not, you're out. We destroy you. Finished. Not the people. We destroy the leaders of these nations. What does it take? And then you will be doing civilization the greatest favor. It's such a simple concept. Everybody's afraid to interfere, you see. You know why? Because they're all corrupt. Because they're afraid if I interfere with the supremacy, the sovereignty of a nation, right, then they themselves, the dictators, are afraid that you can interfere in their sovereignty, because they're also corrupt and evil, you see. But the truth is, like Abraham Lincoln said, America is the last great hope of mankind. And he's right. Because the world is corrupt. It's evil, it's corrupt, it's incompetent, and so on. The world does need a policeman. It really does. There's a moral obligation, especially when the whole civilization is concerned. And I don't understand why it doesn't happen. This is the problem. But anyway, there's something interesting from which I want to say, and that's this. If Iran is the end, and Trump decertifies, and the Congress, right, finds enough courage to actually go along with Trump, then that's going to do something to accelerate the process of Iran. Either the mullahs, in other words, if they remove the plan completely and apply all the sanctions, then the mullahs will go crazy, and what they're going to do is then speed up as much as possible the acceleration, you see. But then what the U.S. can do is just take them out and finish, you see. But what that means messianically is that then Mashiach is here. What the Baruch Hashem is doing is accelerating the end, you see, because Iran is going to try desperately now to do whatever they can because they've been given an ultimatum, you see, and then the U.S. will say, hey, we take you out, and that's the end of it, you see. But if that's the end, then the end has arrived. Then the Baruch Hashem is accelerating the end.
Why would the Iranians not decide to go speed it up right now, knowing what they're dealing with?
Why would, if you can do it legally, why speed it up illegally?
Okay.
That's why. Because we all know that's where they're headed in 8 years, 10 years, whatever the date is, right? They're all going to have nuclear weapons legally, and they can build as many as they want. And then what are you going to do? You cannot allow this kind of a country that is destroying so many different... Look what they destroyed. They've taken over Lebanon, right? Yemen, right? Syria, Iraq, the Shiites into Iraq, I mean, they're slowly taking over the nations of the Middle East, you see? And that's why Israel and Saudi Arabia and Egypt, that's why they're so concerned, you see. But anyways, that's what they should do. But what the meaning of it is that we are watching the acceleration of the end. Because if Iran is the end, and that's being taken out, that means that the Moshe is saying enough, and I want to introduce the Messianic era, so I need to accelerate the last, what's called shibud, the last threat. It's very interesting, very important concept. Yeah.
Obama and Hillary sold Russia a lot of uranium. They said like
20%. Yeah, I want to comment on that.
That Russia helped Iran build their nuclear facilities. So why would Putin give Iran uranium and understand?
Why would Putin do what?
Help Iran with uranium and building their facilities. What?
Russia's, if you ever want to know motives, right? Just look at the self-interest of that particular entity. The motive of Russia is two things. Ultimately boils down to two things, right? One is to restore its prestige as a major power. That's what it wants to do. It's called the old Hashiva Sheftena Kvarishena. we have to, what do you call it, kedem, we need to restore what we used to be. It's covered. They want to be a world power. And if they dominate the Middle East, obviously people will see them as a world power. The second thing Russia needs is they need a port in the Mediterranean. They don't have that. So if they take over Syria and then Lebanon and so on, they will now have a port on the Mediterranean because they don't, and so on, But that's really what it is. Russia has their own interests concerned. They couldn't care less about Iran. Well, Russia doesn't care about Iran. It's all about self. It's always been that way, you see. But anyway, so that's the one idea I wanted to mention in terms now. And it's interesting to see that there will be once Trump decertifies it, there will be a tremendous acceleration on the part of Iran. Iran has to make a move. And the move is not going to be to remove the nuclear weapons. I can tell you that now, because the mullahs are in charge. The move is going to be, okay, now let's take our, 30,000 centrifuges or whatever. Let's keep them going for 24/7. And then the question, of course, is a confrontation with America and whatever and so on. But Iran has one thing in their basket. You know what that is? Everybody wants to do business with Iran. You see, because they have all the oil. Without that, who cares about Iran? You see, so that all this thing is going to interplay. But clearly, what you begin to see is an acceleration. So that's also a very interesting idea, and so on. But Trump is not getting something. He's being fooled. And I believe something will happen with this guy, again, to teach him a lesson. What is that? That's the Middle East. That's Israel. The problem with Trump is he thinks he's the greatest negotiator in the world. He doesn't understand that nobody's a negotiator at all. It's all up to the will of God. The Baruch Hashem has enabled him to become a great negotiator. And he is giving him success. You see, he doesn't understand that. So he thinks, because it's glorious and, wow, his name will go down in history as the greatest president, he wants to make peace between the Arabs and the Jews. Israel and the, not Arafat, but Abbas and so on, But it's astounding how a person can fool himself, you see. I mentioned before, that can never be. It can never be. And I mentioned why. Because, first of all, theologically, Islam cannot make peace with Jews. Because since they captured Israel, that land becomes holy to the Muslims, so he can never give it back to anybody else. Anyway, so the second thing is that whoever makes peace with the Jews will be assassinated, either by Hamas or Hezbollah or ISIS or whatever, and so on. So that's also. The third reason I mentioned is because if they make a deal with the Jews, they have to live with it. It becomes internationalized or legalized internationally, and therefore if they ever break that agreement by trying to attack Israel, then Israel has a legal right, totally, not only because of existential right, but to destroy the Arabs, the Palestinians, and so on, because you're violating. You agree that we are a recognized sovereign state. So what are you doing? See, those three reasons alone, it will never happen. You see, and so peace can never happen. Trump has to get that. He has to understand that. I mean, what the Arabs have to do, which they'll never do, they have to recognize Israel as a sovereign state. They'll never do that. They have to abide by all the agreements that has been signed. They never do that, and not only that, but they also have to stop paying the terrorists. They have to stop using terrorists. I mean, they got to do that. We all know that. Yet, because of that, the Trump administration, Trump whatever, is restricting Israel again to build. Do the same thing as Obama did. You see, and it's not but he really likes Israel. That's not the reason. Obama hated Israel. He's an incredible anti-Semite, Obama. He's one of the worst presidents in history to deal with Israel. Because Obama's an Arab. He's not an Arab, he's a Muslim. That's really what he is. Even if he denies it, doesn't make a difference. But anyway, Trump loves Israel. So why is he doing it? Because part of it is idealistic, because he really would like to make peace. Yeah, it's great. Everybody would love to make peace. That's assuming you have a peace partner, which of course you don't. So the whole thing is absurd, you see. But part of the reasons also is ego. He wants to accomplish what nobody did, and he'll get the Nobel Prize, Peace Prize, He'll join the great Nobel Peace Prize people like Obama, who got the Nobel Prize, right? Arafat, and who else was it? And Carter got the Nobel Peace Prize. You imagine the Peace Prize given to Arafat. It's like, how ludicrous can it get, So that's a very important idea. That has to happen. And something will happen. Eventually Trump has one advantage, is that he's honest. He's just got to be convinced, and the Muslim would do that.
What could teach him this?
It's conjecture what can teach him that. What can the Muslim do to teach him that, It's hard to know. But there will be something ahead that will teach him what the Arabs are. Right now he just doesn't get it. Every time there's a terrorist attack in America, it's always with Muslims. For some reason he thinks that these Muslims are violent, but really Islam is okay. Islam is really a violent religion. Jihad, that the essence of Islam is jihad, which means to dominate everybody else. Islam does not recognize equality. Either you are over them, or they are under you, or they cannot be equal to you. You see, and that's why. So America has to realize that there's no such thing as there are Muslims that do not want to do this clearly, but I think there was an estimate that there's at least 100 million Arabs that want to destroy America, or they actually agree with the terrorism. That's a lot of people, you see. But eventually what must happen, something will happen that will shake Trump, and he'll realize that there can never be a peace. And he does really like and love Israel. His own daughter is Jew, his grandson is Jewish, his Einoklach is Jewish, and so on, He's going to go to a lot of bar mitzvahs someday, But the essential idea is something has to happen to change him. Just like something happened, North Korea happened to change Trump about Iran, which is critical. Something must happen to change his mind about Eretz Yisrael. Because ultimately what he must realize is there can never be peace, and therefore he must turn to Israel and say, you have the green light, do whatever you want, because this will never happen. One of the interesting things we see is Saudi Arabia is now slowly coming. It's all hashgacha, because obviously they're all afraid of Iran, right? And they realize without Israel they're all finished. Israel is the only nation in the Middle East that can stop Iran. There's no other nation. Saudi Arabia certainly can't stop Iran, and so on, So now you can't destroy Israel, because then ultimately speaking, you destroy yourself. It's the greatest way the Muslim finally put a stop to this, by showing them that not only you cannot destroy Israel, you need them as much as possible in order to save yourself. So that's off the map, which is very important. And also what's very interesting, that the Muslim seems to be putting in a guy, Mohammed bin Salman, he's the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, and he just made a tremendous purge, what that is consolidates his power. But they say he made a secret visit to Israel, because he sees the handwriting on the wall. Saudi Arabia now sees, hey, things have changed in the last 6-7 years, He needs to ally himself with Israel, or they're finished. You see, and not only economically they're finished, Saudi Arabia, because they're running out of oil. And now they're even struggling financially, economically in their country. So he realizes, what are we doing? We're destroying our country because of what? Because of Islam? It doesn't make sense. We need Israel. Israel is an incredible bulwark to the whole Middle East, both economically, of course, security-wise against Iran, but more than that, Israel is now one of the greatest nations in terms of progress. Development. It's incredible there. The world leaders know so many different fields. A little tiny country, which itself is a nest nigla, and so on. So the ones who can benefit that from tremendously is Saudi Arabia. What are you fighting with these guys for? What? Wake up. And apparently, this guy Mohammed bin Salman, he's the crown prince, and he woke up. He's supposed to be very good friends with Jared Kushner and so on, because he sees the handwriting on the wall. So he just made all these he put a lot of the family members in prison. You see, and that shows you that he is now accelerating or consolidating his power. But he will be very good for Israel, and certainly very good for the United States. You see, because Saudi Arabia is a major country, and Egypt itself, Egypt Egypt is an incredibly devastated country. You can't believe the poverty in that country, And what's his name? Who's the head of Egypt? Al-Sisi, yeah. That Al-Sisi, I think he realized that. Now ISIS is trying to take him out, and so on and so forth, So slowly the nations of the Middle East are going to become allies with Israel. It takes some time to admit that they won't do. Say, no, they're not going to broadcast and publicize the fact, But they are slowly becoming allies with Israel because the Iranian threat is not going away. Besides that, they have tremendous benefit to become allies with Israel. And they realize that.
Is this part of the tshuva, Ishmael?
Yes, it is. Yeah, correct. Trump is the tshuva, you want to call it the tshuva, the tahara of Edom, and you never know. Saudi Arabia could be the tahara of Ishmael. It's interesting. So this is what's happening. Then there's a third thing that happened, which I just want to mention. In order for Trump to be effective, he is being obstructed tremendously by Hillary, the secret state, the deep state, by what's his name, Obama. But what's interesting now, and Mueller, who's an absolute fraud, it's incredible how they could tolerate this nonsense. But it's now come out 3 major scandals, right? One is that Hillary, with Obama's recognition, and Mueller was the FBI agent when it happened, right? And Holder, all these guys, they all allowed 20% of uranium, United States, to go to Canada, which went to Putin, went to Russia. That's incredible. You're giving away your uranium to an enemy nation. What kind of craziness is this? You see, not only that, that's treason, really. And all of them were involved. You have Mueller, who himself should be, it's incredible. He was the FBI director. And you have him, you have Obama, who signed off, Holder, So this has to be investigated, you see. So Mueller certainly has to recuse himself, actually should be investigated himself. The second thing, which is incredible, is that they realize now that this whole concept of Russian collusion was fabricated by Russia. Because they paid $9 million or whatever to Fusion GPS, I think they're called, to create or to get dirt on Trump from Russia. And of course Russia, what they did is they fabricated the whole thing. The whole thing is lies. And based on those lies, that created the idea that maybe Trump colluded. But it's they that colluded with Russia, which is astounding. So this whole thing is nonsense. This whole business with Mueller is crazy. They ought to fire the guy and throw him out. Because the whole thing was a fabrication, it was an invention of Hillary and the Democratic Party. So that's the second major scandal. And the third major scandal, which destroys her personality, is the fact that they rigged the Democratic Party primaries to remove Sanders' ability to become a candidate, and so on and so forth. I mean, Sanders anyway, it's crazy. But the main idea is that these 3 scandals have come up in one shot in the last couple of weeks. So what it seems is that the Bonsham, and these guys are the major obstructionists of Trump. So I believe what may be happening is the Bonsham is saying, finally, after a year, I have to remove now the obstructions, because that has been going on. I mentioned why in other shurim, and so on. I have to remove them so then Trump can now do what he can do, and so on. Because each one of these scandals can destroy Obama and Hillary Clinton, and destroy the Clintons, and so on, who are one of the worst people in the world, most evil people in the world. But that's also a very important thing that's happening now.
3 great influences of the global culture. The media is now attached to the term fake news. Hollywood and Washington are ridden with a purge of scandals.
Yeah, it's also...
It's absurd. It's comedy at this point already with what's going on. And they were major influences of everyone's perspective outside of Torah.
Yeah, I think that's all together with the hurricanes. The Russian brought a lot of hurricanes because there's a lot of Onshim unfortunate that America needs to wake it up and so on. But part of that is the scandals with Hollywood, But even all the hurricanes, all of this is because these hurricanes are abnormal. Like they all hit records, would it be Maria? I think that's the name of it, and Harvey, and who's the other guy?
Irene?
Who?
Not Irene.
Who?
Irma.
The biggest
Let's not forget
miracle-
Irma,
The biggest miracle is Americans to stop watching football. I mean, people that were really into it.
Why are they not watching
Because
football?
they're taking a knee.
The what?
They're taking a knee, the players. Oh, you don't know about this?
No, it's another scandal.
The NFL's popularity has plummeted.
Why?
Because
They
they're
won't
anti-American.
stand for the
Because
Pledge of
the players
Allegiance,
are not
and
saying
the
the
players
they're-
will take a knee.
I too many people talking. What? Why is the NFL going down?
Because the players are saying that cops are killing blacks and America is not fair. They will not stand for the Pledge of Allegiance at football games. They take a knee, they sit down.
What's a knee?
They don't stand up, they go like this.
They take,
So what is
they
that?
won't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
So what are they? What's their message? What?
Disrespect to the flag and
What's why?
They're against the country.
Why?
Well, if I may, first.
I don't know. When against the country, what happened?
Another institution went down.
What?
Another institution.
Well, clearly, if the NFL went down,
A quick footnote, Colin Kaepernick and two other players would not stand for the national anthem in protest of police behavior
Brutality.
towards blacks. So when Trump said, knock it off, respect the flag, then all of a sudden all the teams joined in.
Uh-huh.
Kaepernick was, they left.
so they're trying to restore the
protest against the flag by not standing
So
for it.
they're-
The major advertisers of the NFL games are suing the NFL because they paid for advertisements. They're going bankrupt, like Papa John's Pizza, all these major
Budweiser is
advertisers.
gonna pull out. People are canceling $200 a month there at NFL to watch all the games.
It
Yeah.
all started
They won't
with,
watch
it all
no
started with a Donald Trump speech where he criticized the NFL for taking the knee, and it became a whole scandal. And then all of a sudden, they went down in flames. And
are they directly protesting the flag, or are they just protesting the brutality and doing it in
No,
an
the
inappropriate
flag-
way?
It just expanded from cops shooting
He thinks about
blacks
this kind of stuff.
to
You just see him
against
taking
the
a knee.
I'm
country.
saying.
So I understand. So
You're right.
the cops shooting blacks on the side of the cops or the blacks?
The blacks.
The blacks.
Outside of the
They're black
blacks.
players that started
Uh-huh.
this and then it spread. I have
I
to
see.
ask, I read recently that more Jews live in Israel than outside of Israel. Is that significant in any way?
Well, it's significant in the sense that that is the beginning of the migration, if you want to use that word, migration of Jews back to Eretz Israel. Yeah. Ultimately, in the end, all the Jews will come back to Eretz Israel, and that will change the halachic status of Israel, because there are many halachas that are dependent if the majority of the Jews of the world live in Israel or outside.
I read that just
So-
recently that it happened, that there's now more Jews in
Yeah, I think there's 7 million Jews now in Eretz Israel, which is more than any country, than any single country, and so on. Yeah, it's slowly, yeah. We are watching, in short, we are watching incredible events taking place just in the last 5 years that are just mind-boggling. And one of the greatest events is the fall of Islam. It's one of the greatest events of all. The Arab states are all collapsing. Every one of them. They're really failed states. That is an unbelievable mark of a Messianic approach. I mean, looking at Egypt is finished. Yemen is finished, and Syria is finished. It's a basket case, Lebanon is finished. Iraq is finished. Afghanistan is finished. Who else is left there? And they're all dying without a bullet being fired, which is always the interesting thing, where Israel doesn't have to do anything. They just, all these states are just collapsing, and not only that, but Israel now has an enormous amount of gas reserves. So they don't even need the oil from the outer countries. America has now become the greatest oil producer in the world, so they don't need any. The price of oil is very low, and so on, which is killing Saudi Arabia and all the OPEC nations and so on. The world is changing in front of our eyes in the last 5 years, 6 years, and so on. In fact, from 2011, the world has drastically changed in 6 years. That's when the Arabs guy committed suicide. They're collapsing and so on. So we're witnessing something that the acceleration of these events are just beyond belief. Then you have the weather extremes, the hurricanes and the earthquakes and all this kind of stuff, The Rebbeinu Shem seems to be accelerating, as I mentioned, the whole Messianic process, you see. But like I say, something has to happen to wake up Trump, to realize that you cannot make peace with these people because, like I mentioned, it is impossible. They will never do that. What you can do, however, is that at least these people could learn to live side by side with Israel and benefit from the incredible Israeli know-how and productivity. That they can do, and that is happening. When Solomon dies, whatever his name is, Solomon dies, and his son takes over, the crown prince. He's only 32 years old, or 31, which is incredible. He's going to change Islam, because Saudi Arabia is the most powerful Islamic nation of all, and when he takes over, he's going to change. You will see.
News reports say he's going to abdicate.
What was that?
News reports are saying he might abdicate for his son Muhammad, soon.
Yeah, well, he's 80 something. He's in his 80s. What does he need this for? He doesn't do anything anyway. He just says, when he does anyway. It's just name anyway. But when this guy, and he's just consolidated his power. He's arrested a lot, took away a lot of corruption. So he is going to really ally himself with Israel. And when Saudi Arabia does that, the whole region will change. Egypt, everybody. Because Saudi Arabia is the most powerful nation in that whole place and so on. The Emirates will change and so on. So you're going to begin seeing that Yishmael is now going to ally itself with Eretz Israel, with Jews, and then America will turn also and ally itself with Jews. The world is slowly changing, but it's a slow process, and the enemies of Israel will, in a certain sense, be eradicated. We're seeing it happening in front of our eyes. Every day there's something else going on that it captures the imagination. Say, wow, can't believe what's happening, because we are watching the end, in many ways, the Messianic era. It's the end of time, you see. And that's really, really what's happening and so on, So I want to bring up to date, and especially if these scandals now become very significant, and Hillary, Obama, Mueller, Holder, all these people are terrible. They hopefully the scandals will create enormous investigations against them, and the upshot will be that Trump will then be freed, because there's no longer the accusation. It's ridiculous accusation that he colluded with Russia or anything like that, and he will then be free. People realize that, hey, the whole thing was a collusion, a vendetta to stop him, and he will then be able to do what he has to do, and so on. There's a lot of great things that are happening against evil, which is what has to happen in order for the Mashiach to make his entry. Certainly Mashiach ben Yosef, and so on, Any case, that's the story, that I would like to talk about. So I think we're up to date, basically. Okay.
Comey's been implicated.
What?
All of a sudden, documents came up against Comey.
Yeah. Because the original document said gross negligence, and then they changed it to excessive, whatever it was, extreme carelessness. What do you mean? You yourself, they did it obviously because that would have meant Hillary would be put in jail, because gross negligence is the federal term for what she did, which is a felony and so on, And not only that, he exonerated her before he investigated her. The whole thing is it's such sheker. It boggles the mind how these people can do what they did and then get away with it, and nobody cares. You should know one thing: America has to be very careful. You know why? And my feeling is that's why a lot of America is suffering, and they don't realize that. The nations of the world are commanded to have din, courts, a legal system. That's part of the Sheva Mitzvahs, you see. When America, which is supposed to be a lamppost for the whole world, doesn't, then it makes a mockery of justice. America has made a mockery of justice many times with Hillary, who should have been indicted, with all this. It's a mockery of justice with Comey and so on, And when America does that, where they are not abiding by a legal system, and they are, as I say, they're making a mockery of justice, they're going to be nanash, and that's what's happening. America, God can take out America, it's no big deal, but they are being punished severely. You see, and I believe the reason for that is because America is making justice, just comical. They don't realize that. You can't do that. You need to, America, which represents the Justice Department, they don't realize that. If you don't go after these guys, right, then you are making, like I say, a mockery of justice. That's forbidden. Because once they do that, then everybody's going to laugh at the whole thing and so on, you see? And I believe that's one of the main reasons why America is being punished.
There's a theory that Mueller actually is working with Donald Trump and not against him because of some of the lobbyists, like the Podestas, are Democrats, and they're clearly afraid.
Yeah, they're all afraid of being put in jail. Because that's why they hate Trump.
Mueller may actually have been flipped.
So,
That's speculation. Yeah, I know.
Ahead of the DNC.
Yeah.
And exposing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, the whole Democratic Party. It's sheker v'chod. The whole thing is so corrupt. You can't believe, how corrupt the government as the swamp, as what's his name, Trump says. It's a swamp.
What about Trump's tweets are filled with, well, let's go FBI, Department of Justice. Where are you? Every day.
Yeah. Where's Sessions? Where is Sessions? He's in vacation. Is he on vacation in the Bahamas? Where is this guy?
Yeah.
This guy's. I tell you, because I believe he's a wimp. That's really what he is.
Sessions.
Yes, Sessions. Where is he? There's scandal after scandal and evidence after evidence. You don't have a peep out of this guy.
Not Trump. His inner circle can't live up to his expectations either.
No.
It's just him. It's a one-man show almost.
Yeah, it was a big mistake to make Sessions Attorney General. He should have made Giuliani. Big mistake.
Yes.
Yeah. Giuliani would go after like a shark.
He's still advising him, but why is he in the back?
Yeah, he should be the Attorney General, then you could clean up this mess. You should know these guys, what they're doing is making, I hate to say Chil Hashem, but these guys are desecrating the whole concept of government. It's really what it is. It's a laughing stock. That's what the American government really, according to justice and righteousness, is an incredible aberration, of what should be correct. And these guys are doing it, and nobody cares. Nobody does anything, And that's their job, you see. And listen, too bad. Trump needs better advisors.
What about the?
He's got bad advisors. It's really what it is. Yeah.
What about
And he needs, as I say many times, he needs a religious advisor to tell him what's happening, really.
Can we debate that one fine point? He's a billionaire who's been doing this for 40 years, and the rub is saying he has bad advisors.
Yeah.
Perhaps things are not what it seems, and he has a different plan. I mean, it's not like he just lost his brain. All of a sudden
No, Trump is a very intelligent guy, but that doesn't mean he's taking good advice. When he hired that guy Priebus, whatever the guy's name is. Priebus. That was the worst thing he could have done. Why? Because he owed him a favor? So because he owes him a favor, therefore everybody's got to suffer? Come on. So give him some cash and walk away. No, he hired many people that he had to fire, because he's being influenced by, military or whatever, and he's making tremendous mistakes.
Priebus was an enemy who once said no matter what the delegates are, he's not going to get the nomination. There's an aspect about Trump's personality. He and his loved ones are targets for tremendous infantile, mean-spirited things from every media outlet, and it affects him, and it seems like he wants to win over his enemies.
Who?
Trump. Like he's sensitive to it to some degree, where some people think, how long can he hold up with this? They criticize his wife, his daughter, his sons, and he keeps trying to want to win them over to some degree.
He's making mistakes, what can I tell you? He really needs a good advisor. He needs somebody who cares about Trump and the American people. Not somebody who's an anti-Semite, or he's into the power, or it's all these guys into, He needs somebody who's Alech, somebody who loves, in his case, somebody who really loves the common man. All these guys have no concept of the common man, That's the problem with the whole world. The common man is garbage to most people, you see. you need somebody it's like in Israel, you need somebody who's Ohev Yisrael, somebody who loves Jews, and then the whole state of Israel would change. Because Israel has an incredible amount of corruption. Incredible, because they're all self-interest. But somebody has to be there who loves the Jewish people at his own expense, and he won't take advantage just to further his own cause. You see, America needs the same thing. They need somebody who loves the common man in America. Trump is such a person. The problem is he's surrounded by guys who do not love the common man. They love themselves, you see, and I get the feeling he cannot distinguish between them, between those who really feel what he feels, to love the common man, the average American. He cannot distinguish, so he thinks that maybe they do. Meanwhile, they're all steering him in a direction, right, which is basically their own self-interest. You see, he's making a tremendous mistake in that way. Listen.
What do you think the influence on the country is with the Supreme Court?
What?
Supreme Court ruling of gay rights.
What about it?
What do you think the influence?
Well, that's a terrible destruction of American morality. Yeah, that's another reason why. If you notice, all these things are floods. A flood is a mini marble. That's really what it's about. God is destroying them because America has become an incredibly amoral country. That's really what they are. And God's saying, you cannot do this. But it's all the mess that America's in. Trump is president. He should act like a president and lead and do what he wants. Forget about everybody else. He's the boss. He has enormous power. And his problem is trying to placate everybody. Like they say, if you can lead, if you're the leader, then lead. He can do an enormous amount by himself. And he has to stand up against the Congress. Because the Congress is one of the worst institutions of all. They are so corrupt. They are so into themselves. I think their approval rating is like 10% or some incredibly low figure. Yeah, because these guys are wimps. And stop compromising with, you were elected to do a job, to do the job. Stop compromising with people. And he keeps doing that, you see. In any case, there's a lot more to talk, but that's it.
Bribery. It's legal to
contribute to Congress. Congress the essence of Congress is bribery. That's really what they are. Sheikhad, bribery, that's all they do. They always look, it's bribery, and they always look, how can I remain further in my position? It's all it's about, I once told you, it's like I think it was, I forgot who it was, but they asked the guy who just elected president, the moment you sat in that chair, the president, the Oval Office, what'd you think? He says, well, how am I going to make sure that I remain in the chair?